everyone. To the Premier, what happens once government reaches herd immunity of 70%? Do we go back to having full sports with fans kind of the next day? What happens?
I'm certainly not certain that we can go to having full the next day. I think we have to look at the picture, and it's a great question, Earl. And you know how much I miss my sports and how much I miss those things. And from the perspective of getting to herd immunity and what does it look like, the fact is that we made a conscious decision last year to make sure that we was able to support our tourism industry. We were very successful last year with one of the best testing regimes in the world. It worked very well. The thing is that this virus changes. And so we look at what took place in November, where there was an outbreak that we were able to roll back to phase restrictions and get that outbreak out very quickly. We look at what happened this time around, where we implemented the phased restrictions even earlier than we did in the outbreak the last time, and that was not sufficient. And why? We were dealing with a new variant. The fact is that these variants are continuing, whether it's B.1.1.7 or whether it's P.1 or whether it's B.1.5.1 or whether it's something in California, New York, or somewhere else, the variants are continuing. And so the view and the change for the government of Bermuda is now that vaccines are fully and readily available in all of our major gateway cities, that we are going to change our approach. And that means that we need to tamp down and eliminate the virus here on the island while increasing the protection of the border. The protection of the border will be increased, and for persons who are entering the country who are non-immunized will have a significant period of mandatory quarantine. When we have a place where we are relatively secure and we have herd immunity and there are no cases in the island and relatively few cases, and we can catch those cases, then we will certainly be able to relax restrictions. What I don't want people to think is that by the day we reach 70%, masks are all gone, limits are all gone, the same day, all the rest. We need to work through the time to make sure that the virus is out of the way, that the protections are working, and the rollbacks will be able to happen. But to answer your question, I fully expect to be in St. George's so that Somerset can take the cutback this year for Cup Match. And the only way we get there is if people register for the vaccine so that we can be ready to hit that target that we've laid out. We are going to the Minister of Health is working very hard. We're trying to do additional things. Minister of Health has said that I can't talk about them in press conferences until they're fully confirmed. So there's more announcements to come when we're talking about how we're going to get these vaccines out. But the most critical point is that we see an end to this. It is going to be an adjustment. Last year, it was not this way, but now we know that things are changed. So a year later, there is a different situation, and we can afford to make sure that our border is closed to non-immunized travelers. For people who want to come in, they will have to have that period of mandatory quarantine. We will still test people to ensure that even persons who are immunized, who can contract the coronavirus infection, as you were looking at someone who has done so, to make sure they're not carrying a variant, to make sure all the rest. So we're still going to have those protections. But we believe that with protections at the border, with significant amounts of person immune here, with the restrictions of which we're going to have in place as we get up to that place of herd immunity, that we'll be able to have a significant reduction of cases here, and that will see us be into relaxed restrictions and hopefully not, have all of us have to be in the warm St. George's air, even though this nice breeze is coming off for a cup match with masks on. But it remains to be seen. So I don't want to make any promises, but the objective is to get there. The objective is so that, we can have the things in which we want to have. We can do those things. So the fact is that everyone wants to talk about, whether it's SailGP or this or all the rest. We want to have our local sports too. We want to get back there. And that's what's important. And so that's what we're working towards. And that's why it's so critical that we all be a part of this effort. As the Minister of Health has said, the vaccines are not just about you, it's about the community. And it's about protecting those persons who are unable to get a vaccine for whatever reason. There are people who cannot get vaccines due to their medical history. And so for us, it's important that those of us who can go ahead and do so that we can create that protective bubble here in Bermuda.
Okay. Well, today we got a press release from the Bermuda Police Service indicating that people can't ride their pedal bikes for exercise. Now we have people that train and cycle, but we have a lot of people that exercise, which could also be used as a stress relief. Can anyone give the public a reason behind this action not being allowed if you're out riding by yourself, just for exercise or stress relief?
Earl, I can't speak to what came out from the Bermuda Police Services. I haven't seen that. But what I can say is that we're trying our best to keep people inside as much as possible or on their properties to make sure they're not mixing. I do not believe that is actually different than what took place last year during the period of time that we had ourselves in our homes. And trust me, I recognize the criticism when we're talking about beaches and parks and all the rest. I recognize it. But what we're trying to do is to minimize the excuses for people to go. The intention for this stay-at-home order that we have in place is to expire after 7 days. We need to figure out exactly what that next phase will look like, what the restrictions will look like. We understand and recognize. I know it's not something I like. I do not wake up in the morning saying I want to tell people they can't go on the beach. I want to tell people they can't ride their bike. I want to tell people they can't do this and tell people they can't do that. It is a challenge, but the intention is for these 7 days to ask everyone just to pause their best, and then we will get to a place where we can begin to relax the restrictions. You know, we knock on wood. You hear me knocking hard. You know, we've got positivity rates there. We were there a few days ago where some of the rates went down. They shot back up. You know, it's a worry. So we are hoping that the restrictions that we put into effect over 2 weeks ago are beginning to show up inside of these testings. We're hoping that the work of the contact tracers, and Dr. Io can speak to that, is less. But the view is we're just trying to hold everyone home. It's not to say, oh, I don't want you to exercise. I'm not saying I don't want you to do this. No, that's not what this is about.
Okay. Did I hear you answer a question that all questions regarding the CLGP are to be directed at the BTA? And if so, why? Why aren't we're in a crisis. Why shouldn't we be addressing?
What question do you have on CLGP? I answered one earlier. What question do you have? I would say I have been in gathered all day, so I don't know what the latest is. So, but ask away.
Well, I mean, clearly, there was a question I had at the 2 weeks ago regarding if anyone from the organization, within the organization, had tested positive that wasn't answered or had contracted.
And here's the thing I can tell you, Earl. I do not have an answer to that question. And I am uncertain that it would actually be allowed for someone to release that information. I volunteered my thing, but I don't, and that's just something from a perspective we don't, but I don't know if that is the case. I'm uncertain if the CMO may know, and if the CMO may say that he can answer the question. I actually do not know.
Okay, but did you answer a question saying that direct your questions to the BTA?
Did I answer? I think that there's a request for media questions to go there. But if you have a question,
Okay,
Earl, you have one more. Ask away.
I was just making sure. No, I was just making sure because if now we're directed to the BTA, I just want to make sure who we're asking, and I think the public is sitting here waiting to hear whether or not this organization will be given the approval to even start training again.
Well, here's the one. I'll state the thing that I stated earlier, Earl, and I'll state it again, is that, you know, our ability to host events generally is an important part of our tourism recovery. And so whether it's cup match, sailing, or golf, or even carnival, we have to prepare for hosting events safely in light of the change that, you know, that COVID has brought to this world. So it just so happens that right now it's sailings, and the same precautions and rules apply for any event we hope to host in the near term. And so the BTA is liaising with the Ministry of Health to determine how any public health risk may be able to be mitigated to support this event. We know the economic importance of this event and events generally to the economy, and the need to balance that with our existing public health status. And so we're still working through those things. The answer that I gave on Sunday was that SailGP was not part of a consideration of what we were doing when we were discussing these restrictions. They're not. So we now have to deal with the things which come after the decisions that we've made in the interest of public health. And that's what we're working through.
Okay. My final question would be, we have elite athletes who are attempting to qualify for things such as the Olympics and other international events. Has any consideration been given for them to be allowed some access to training during this period? As you've indicated, it's very difficult for elite athletes to be out of training for any period of time.
Earl, that's a great question. It's not something that we've ever considered. I'm sure someone may want to make a request to the Minister of National Security. Something may be considered like that. It's a great question. I'm happy for you to write in. It's not something we've considered, to be completely honest, but I understand giving it as an Olympic year, there may be one or two cases and people who are going to represent the country. It's something that may be able to be considered. But the main message is, 7 days. But elite athlete, you're right, getting ready to qualify for the Olympics or something like that. may be a challenge. So the last thing we want to do is have one less Bermudian representing our country in Japan.
One was turned down today, but I'm done. Thank you.
Look at you, Earl. You got all the tricks. Seriously, Earl, have that person shoot me a message. It is a consideration, but I can accept that what we're trying to do is to hold tight.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.